Hi everyone, I'm Smith Singh. I'm the Technical Marketing Engineer at Cisco Systems. So today I will walk you through our new features which we have introduced in our AsyncOS 10.0. So let's get started. The first feature which I would be talking about here is the referrer header. Now when we talk about this referrer header, you would find that it's being misspelled. Now most of the people, like within the header itself, they call this as referrer header. So if you see over here, it's being misspelled with a single R over here. Now what is the advantage of introducing this referrer header? We had a lot of customers where they want to make sure that whenever they are talking about this referrer header, they can create policies based on that. Now most of us go to google.com and search for some kind of a text. So say for example, today I go to www.google.com and say search for Cisco. Now the point is, when I search for the Cisco as a keyword, the first result, it takes me to www.cisco.com. Now my point is that what we guys are using is, as a search engine, I'm using Google to land up to cisco.com. So whenever I'm going to Cisco over here, now what I'm using is google.com as my referrer header. Okay, so now let's talk about one of the use case which we use pretty often, that is YouTube. And I think most of us within our organization use YouTube a lot, especially the high definition videos. We find it pretty exciting, but again, it's choking the bandwidth. So what I see as one of the use case for most of the customers is that they want to block YouTube by default. But again, if it is going through some kind of a referrer, which might be their corporate website. So let's take a corporate website, say as cisco.com. If I'm going to YouTube, it should be allowed. So which means if it's cisco.com and I go to YouTube, it's being allowed using my referrer header. So that's one of the use case of the referrer header, and there are many which you can go and create with this feature itself. Now let's go and jump in to the second feature, which we would talk about, Office 365 integration. Now this has been in the market for long, and there are multiple solutions in the market where customers are looking at which can go and give them some kind of an integration with Office 365. So what we have done over here is that we take the XML file from Office 365. So we get the XML file from Microsoft, put that XML file into WSA, which is our appliance, and then what you can do is you can create a policy based on that. Whether you want to allow it, you can say, I want to allow that Office 365 as an application, or I want to block this application altogether. So that's the important feature which we guys have even introduced, just to make sure where we have a mandate saying that Office 365, we should have some kind of a control there. Okay, so now let's talk about the third feature which we have introduced, which is third-party feeds. Now, the whole purpose of introducing this third-party feeds as a feature is that we have a lot of organizations which want to give you those feeds, especially government or financial organization, and say that, can you just go ahead and block these IP addresses for me? Or can you just make sure that these IP addresses are being meant in your allow list or in any of the list which is being allowed, just to make sure that these IPs are whitelisted, right? So let's look at these third-party feeds as one of the feature there. So when we look at third-party feeds, first of all, you want to make sure that it's in a CSV format. And when we look at the CSV format, we follow a specific format which we get it from our custom URL categorization itself, where you need to have an address, which can be an IP address, and along with that, you need to also have an address type. So when I talk about an address over here, would be, say for example, you are going to say google.com. So that would be your domain itself, and along with that, you would mention that it's supposed to be a site. Now the other format which we also support is regex. So you can always say that, can you just go ahead and block just cisco.com, or can you just allow cisco.com? And that's where you define the regex as the format. So these two formats are some things which are important, which we call as in the address type. So we want to make sure that whenever you are exporting or importing these specific feeds, this should be in this right format. And this format has to be followed to get these feeds. Now, along with that, you can also define the update interval. So when I talk about update interval, that's where you can define whether it's supposed to be in which minutes or in supposed to be in hours, so that these feeds gets updated. Now let's move on to the fourth feature which we guys have introduced, that's intermediate certificate. Now when we talk about intermediate certificate, it's like by default this feature is being enabled and you don't need to go and disable this feature, but whenever we find that there is a server certificate which is creating a problem, we handle it using our WSA appliance itself. So you don't need to bother about it, it's being enabled by default. Now the fifth thing which we have introduced as a feature here is supposed to be updated user agents. Now updated user agents are more to do with, like, say for example, if you're using some specific browser itself, that's supposed to be a user agent. So what we have done as an update to the user agent with top 5 browser itself, like you talk about Chrome, you talk about IE, you talk about Firefox, you talk about Safari, and you also talk about Opera. So all these browsers have now the latest versions where you can create policies based on these user agents and map those policies to your access rules. So that's one of the beauty which we have also introduced in this updated user agent list. So now let's move further towards the AMP. Now there has been an update with respect to an AMP over here where we talk about, when I'm talking about AMP, there are 2 updates which we have. The first update is where we are talking about updated reporting. And the second update towards the AMP is where we talk about AMP private cloud. Now when we talk about the updated reporting, our main purpose of putting the updated reporting in the AMP is that we want to also introduce file names. So we had a lot of requests coming in from the customers where they were saying that, oh, okay, you have the right reporting, but we also need to know the file names just rather than just the hashes. So that's where with the updated AMP reporting, we have introduced the file names as well. Now, important aspect towards the AMP private cloud, this was something where we have the air gap networks and they really want to make sure that they don't send any data to our cloud itself. So that's where we had introduced this AMP private cloud, which would be making sure that all the data are still in your premises itself. And this is basically meant for your, might be you're talking about your federal customers or your financial customers where they need to keep the data on the local premises itself. Okay, so this wraps up our features which we have introduced in our AsyncOS 10.0. Now, I also want to keep you updated with the new reporting, you can say a new reporting version which we guys have introduced in our AWSR. So just wanted to make sure that whenever you're looking at 10.0, you should also look at our advanced web security reporting application. So we have come up with this advanced web security reporting version 6.0. And the beautiful feature which we have introduced in advanced web security reporting application is custom filters. Now the beauty of this custom filters is, and where we got a lot of demand coming in from customers, that they want to create their own customized reports. So with the help of this feature, you can pick in the fields from, whether it's from CWS, that's Cloud Web Security, or whether it's from WSA, you can pick in the fields and feeds specifically for WSA where you can introduce these custom filters and where you can get all the fields listed over here, like might be this is the source IP, this is my destination URL, and this is my username, So you can pick in these fields, create a report saying that I need a report in a pie chart format or might be in a histogram. So you can create all these reports with that specific field in any of these formats itself. Okay, so these were the new features which we guys have introduced in our AsyncOS 10.0, as well as with our reporting application, which is Advanced Web Security Reporting 6.0. I hope now you've got a gist of what we guys are bringing on the table. That's where I would really highly recommend you to look at our release guides just for further information. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Okay, till the next time, see you, bye.